Like, subscribe, and share to Voices of Linden TV.
Good afternoon and welcome to the Money Minutes with Michelle Moseley. Today we're really pleased to have with us Carol Smith, who you've met before, and we also have joining us today Charlene Moore. I will let Carol do the honors of introducing Charlene as we move forward in our program. Carol?
Hi, Michelle. Thank you for having me again on the show. I appreciate being here. It's my pleasure to introduce my good friend, Charlene Moore. Charlene is a mortgage consultant. She's the owner of More Freedom. She's been in the business for quite some time. We met 17 years ago when I started in this business as a financial advisor, and we've stayed connected ever since. Charlene, would you just like to say hi and say a little bit about yourself?
Hello, everyone. Happy Sunday. And Michelle and Carol, thank you so much for inviting me onto your platform. As Carol has already mentioned, I've been in the industry for at least around 17 years, and I've seen a lot, but I will consider definitely myself a professional, someone who definitely has knowledge of this industry and how to really and truly make your dreams come true. So thank you so much once again for including me.
Thank you. Welcome. So for most people, buying a home is the single largest purchase that any one of us will most likely ever make in a lifetime. It comes with it, some responsibilities, which include, for example, credit. I want us to look at the whole concept of credit and its relationship to the whole home buying process. So if you can walk us through that first stage, Charlene, as to what is the relevance of credit and credit utilization as it relates to anyone looking to buy a home?
Okay, well, credit utilization, it is very important. The way that you use your credit or the way that you pay your credit will determine whether or not you get the best interest rates that's out there versus a higher interest rate that's out there. With the credit, when you have, let's just say, you know what, it's time for you to make your credit card payment. What the banks like to see is that you are using at least 50% of your utilization or of your credit limit. Okay, so let's just say where you have a credit limit of $1,000. On your payment date, you should have at least, if you're not able to pay off everything, at least pay down 50%, so $500, right? So that is what the banks are looking for. They're looking to see that you're not maxing out your credit cards. They're looking to see that you're not one payday away, let's say, from filing for a bankruptcy or a consumer proposal.
Awesome. Thank you for that. That's good to know. And what about how it comes down to the credit utilization and the affordability part of it, or even just knowing what a client could afford? How do they go about making that determination?
Okay, well, I have a question before that, Michelle, before she changes onto that, if you don't mind.
Absolutely.
When she was talking about the 50% credit utilization, so if a client maxes out their credit card, as she was mentioning, Charlene, does that over time, it's my understanding, I think I've heard that when you max out your credit and you continue to have this maxed out credit for months and months over, you actually start to erode your beacon score. It starts to go down. Is that true? Fair to say?
Well, maxing out your credit card and not really paying it down on the payment day, it does actually affect your score. Now that's when, let's say the credit Equifax or TransUnion, which are the two credit reporting agencies, start to deduct points from you. Okay, so it is very important that we all keep in mind that we want to at least use 50% of whatever the credit limit is. If we stick to those rules, then you know what, you're on your way to basically being approved for a better interest rate.
Okay. Sorry,
That's
Michelle.
good to know. No, that's fine. Thank you, Kara. Thanks for asking that. That's good to know and good for clarification purposes. I think you just touched on something very interesting, because I think a lot of people don't realize the importance or the relationship between having the good credit score and how that is applicable or impact their interest rate. Would you like to discuss a little bit about how that is done, or what the impact is?
The impact on the interest rate. So we all work hard for our money. It doesn't matter what we do, we all work hard for our money. So a lot of the money that we earn, we want to make sure that with a lower interest rate, more of your money will go towards paying down the principal of your home. In turn, what that basically means is that you're paying off your mortgage much sooner, right? Versus if you have a higher interest rate, a lot of your hard-earned money actually goes towards the interest, right? Or sorry, it goes towards the, not the principal, but yes, definitely the interest portion, okay? Which means that you're giving the bank your money, you're giving it away. It's not helping you. So once again, with your credit, if we want a good interest rate, we need to make sure that we stick to 50% utilization. So therefore it benefits us and not the bank.
So if I'm understanding this correctly, is that you could qualify for a mortgage. You may have everything in place to qualify for a mortgage, and Carol may have everything in place to qualify for a mortgage. The differentiator will come on who has the better utilization and repayment in terms of what credit rate, what interest rate, will be afforded to that person. So for example, Carol could end up with an interest rate of 2%, but you might end up with an interest rate of 6%. And I think that's something that people need to understand, is that your utilization, your credit utilization does not necessarily mean that you will not get a mortgage or you will not be able to qualify, but it could seriously impact the interest rate that you will be given by the bank, correct?
That's correct, 100%, yes.
Thank you for that. So we'll move on to another question, because I wanted to find out, we hear a lot of talks about the TDSR and the GDSR, and I know that as a mortgage consultant, you're probably quite familiar with that. And, for some people, it is a little bit of a hazy discussion. What is the impact? We're still on, I guess, what's going to impact your credit score or your interest rate, et cetera, or what you qualify for. So if you can give us a bit of details.
Okay, so all across the board, it doesn't matter if you go to, let's say, for example, an A lender. So an A lender we consider in the industry would be like your major banks, your TDs, your Royal Banks, your Scotias, okay? And then you also have lenders, right? We call them alternative lenders, which are able to help those who may have credit issues, okay? So the guidelines on the A side, or I'm going to call it the alternative side, is they're going to use your income and they're going to take a certain percentage of your income. So we have guidelines that we have to meet. If we go over those guidelines, your deal will not be approved. So it's very important, once again, and we're going back to credit, the utilization of all of your, whether it be your credit cards, your loans, any collection items that may be out there. We want to make sure that everything gets paid down or paid off in order to be able to have a higher, I'm going to say, purchase price, because we have less debt, right? Which means that we will definitely qualify, and we will be within those the ratios and the guidelines that the bank is asking us to be under in order for us to get an approval.
Okay, I want to shift a little bit around and ask, if you can just look a little bit as to why should a potential buyer shop around? I want to kind of address that. I know we kind of step away a bit from that, but why should a potential, home buyer shop around it?
Now, when we say shopping around, I think it's very important for everyone or our viewers to know is that you don't want to go from bank to bank just seeing, what sort of interest rate will you give me? Because that could also impact your credit score. That could bring it down because you're going from lender to lender. They are checking your credit score, and that also can have a negative impact on your credit score. So what you may want to do is actually speak to a mortgage professional and have them see, you know what rates are out there? What is the best rate that you would be able to get from different lenders? And then once you have that information, at that point in time, you can actually select a lender or a bank that actually suits your needs.
So as a person looking to buy, a place, Charlene, if I'm a first-time home buyer, I'm just going to ask, what would make it different if you are the person as the mortgage broker checking my credit score versus me going to the different banks? What would make it different?
Well, as a mortgage broker, I have access to the major banks and also lenders. So when I pull your credit score, I can actually go and now speak to the banks and speak to the lenders to see, you know what, this is my client, this is what their situation is, what sort of interest rate would they qualify? What can you do for them? As opposed to if you go into the bank, you're only dealing with a specific bank, right? Mm-hmm. If you wanted to find out, you know what, maybe a different institution may be able to offer you, you still have to repeat the same process again, which means that you have to go to the different institution, fill out an application, and then see what they are willing to offer you.
Okay, so you're not doing a full adjudication once again each time. As the mortgage broker, if I understand it correctly, you are simply just inquiring on their behalf, so it does not hit the beacon score, correct?
Exactly,
awesome.
Yes.
Well, thank you very much for explaining that. I wanted to talk a bit because I was chatting with a realtor from the U.S. side who unfortunately couldn't join us today. She would have added some interesting content or context to the conversation. One of the things that she did talk about is, the FHA fees, etc., which would be a conversation for another time as it is applicable to the U.S. However, on our side of the fence, we do have something kind of similar in terms of the mortgage insurance. Or you have a conventional mortgage and you have the high ratio mortgage. Would you mind just discussing a bit for us, our viewers, so they understand the difference?
Okay, so a high ratio mortgage is when you are putting down less than 20%. So 20% is less than 20%, which is your down payment. So that could be 0 to 19.99%, right? So what happens is that we'll say CMHC or Genworth, they will say to the bank, okay, fine, you know what, we are willing to insure this deal. Now, the insurance premium gets added onto the mortgage amount that is also needed. And you are definitely protected by CMHC or Genworth, right? Now, when it comes to a conventional deal is when you put your down payment is more than 20%. So that is 20% onward. What that allows you to do, it allows you to have more of a, I'm going to say purchasing power. So you're able to purchase more of a property as opposed to less property.
Okay. That's fair enough. I wanted to, before we drill down into, I know it's some technical information is involved here, but before we drill down to another aspect where I wanted to look at how, your steps that are involved if you have a client sitting in front of you and they'd like to buy a home. I wanted to have some technical information, I suppose. Someone asked this, what's the difference between a mortgage term and amortization? I think a lot of times people do get those two, kind of intertwined and think they're the one and the same thing. So maybe clarify a bit for us.
Yes. Okay. So your term is the amount of time that the bank is willing to give to you. So let's say, for example, you have a 5-year term. So the bank is willing to give you whatever interest rate you qualify for a period of time. That could be 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. Okay. Mm-hmm. Once that term is over, now you have the option to either refinance. So you can either take out some more money, or maybe even go to a different institution that's willing to give you a better interest rate. Okay. So that's what our term is. Our amortization is basically the period of time that it takes to pay off the entire mortgage. So that could be 25 years, that could be 30 years, okay? Or maybe a little bit more depending on the circumstances. But those are the two differences between your term and your amortization.
Perfect. Thank you for that. I appreciate that. I think even for myself, years ago, I think it was something initially before I got more my feet wet in the industry that I myself had struggled with and couldn't understand what was the difference between term versus amortization. In buying homes, Charlene and Carol, you both agree that it's not just a lot of the information that we chatted about so far pertain to first-time home buyers. And, there's a whole bunch of, different aspects when it comes to the first-time home buyers. But there's also, let's call them repeat buyers. And so we'll get to that in a second. What I'd like you to do, Charlene, for us is to just kind of discuss your checklist. I'm a client. I've gotten in touch with Charlene, and I want to understand what is needed in order for me to get my home, that home that I've been kind of dreaming about for a long time. Like, how do you walk me through that step, Charlene?
Okay, so the first thing that I would actually say to you, Michelle, is, you know what? I would like you to get your credit report. And I would tell you there are two credit reporting agencies, which is either Equifax or TransUnion. So the banks, all lenders will either use Equifax or TransUnion. And the importance of that, of you getting your credit score once again, is to see, you know what, where do you stand today in terms of your credit? Okay, so that's very important. That is the first thing that you want to get. Make sure that you have that before you decide to go and look for a property. Now, the next step or the next item that you need to have is, you know what, where do you work? Let's get a job letter, let's get a pay stub, because it is very important to have to know what you are earning, because that will also help us to determine how much of a property you're able to qualify for, okay? The banks also would like to see, you know what, have you filed your taxes? So I would also ask you, you know what, to give me your 2 years of notice of assessments, just to confirm that your taxes have been completed. Okay, so I would say, just to start off, let's look at those 3 items, because that will actually tell us a lot. It will show us the picture, and it will determine what steps we do next.
Does that also, at that time, I imagine that would also really drill down into what the client could afford, or is that, as you get a little deeper into that meeting?
Well, that will also help to determine what the clients can also afford. And I did miss something. So the other thing that I would need to know is, you know what, how much money are you working with? How much money are you using as a down payment? So we would require at least 90 days, because those are the bank's guidelines. They want to see where your money is coming from for your down payment. So those are the 4 items that you would actually need to come to the table with before we could actually go any further. But that will definitely help us to determine how much of a purchase price you would qualify for.
That's very good. Thank you so much for that. And again, I know that I have some of my friends and family are looking, and they're from the US side. And like I said, regrettably, the person that I had for the US side could not make it on today. However, there are some things that were discussed that were fairly similar in terms of the steps. In her case, she's a realtor. She works with mortgage brokers, but she works with the clients, and she does have a checklist as well. I will be sharing her information as she's asked me to. And she does work, and she has a checklist where she goes to, from step A right down to, when she hands that person the key. And it's interesting to know that a lot of the steps, Charlene, that you mentioned, the realtor, her name is Cynthia. Cynthia is also incorporated in her approach. Now, I really do want to put a little bit of a PSA out here for my American friends and family, is that we will have Cynthia, the realtor, in at some point. And I will let everyone know, because I think it's important to understand some of the US side. She did did go over it with me in detail. I found it to be very, very interesting. For example, the FHA, I was stunned to discover that it will be something that the interest rate is actually recalculated as it goes down. That's a very interesting, it doesn't happen here unless, Charlene, you know of something like that. But each time the interest rate goes down, a person with an FHA is given a call and their mortgage is refinanced, if you will, without any penalty, so that they can take advantage of that lower interest rate. So that's a little bit of a side conversation, if you will, just because I know that there are some people coming on here and we don't have the exact American content, but for anyone who's listening, please rest assured, a lot of the content that we're sharing here today is very much across the board in North America. And this is the reason why we refer to this as the North America content, because a lot of the things that you can apply here in America, you do use Equifax as well for your credit score. And pretty much everything that Charlene has said today, without minus the very specific Canadian content, is applicable to both sides of the borders. Carol, did you have anything to add at this point?
No, actually, I'm learning a lot myself. I was actually thinking about those people who buy real estate and obviously buy a lot of investment properties. And when they get their initial mortgage for the principal residence, I'm sure they get the best rate. But then when they have a second mortgage and a third mortgage and so forth, what type of interest rates do those people look at that already have an existing mortgage in place for the principal resident that they may have bought recently?
Well, any other investment property, once you're going for a mortgage, you will still get the best rate, just as long as you meet those criteria. And it boils down to, once again, our GDS and our TDS being able to qualify for the property that you're purchasing. And once again, the debt load that you have.
What are some of the things? Sorry about that, Carol. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, both you and Charlene actually mentioned the GDS and the TDSR. And I was just going to say, for those that don't know what it stands for, the GDSR is the gross debt service ratio, and the TDSR is the total debt service ratio. And one includes utilities and debts, and the other one doesn't. That's just the different banks use different things. Just that we as financial professionals, we use these acronyms, and then we forget that people listening, they're wondering, like, what are they talking about? So that's what the GDSR. The average buyer isn't going to go to the bank and they start spouting GDSR to them, but as financial professionals, we do. So I just wanted to explain that to anyone listening. It's the gross debt service ratio and the total debt service ratio. And as I said, one includes the debts and the expenses, and the other one doesn't. I think that's correct, right, Charlene?
Correct. Thank you, Carol, for the clarification. Yes.
Absolutely. And we do tend to go into our own little jargon, forgetting that not everyone speaks the same language. And so thank you for that. I wanted to, Carol brought up the point with regards to the repeat buyer and whether or not and how they're assessed. But as well, Charlene, when you're looking at someone who is a repeat buyer, what are some of the things that you're looking for having in a conversation with them that you will not necessarily have in a conversation with the first-time home buyer?
Okay, well, the first thing is that the only option that you have is it becomes a conventional deal. Okay. So having an investment property, you need to put down 20% or more. The insurers will not approve your deal, let's say, for example, at 5%. Now, the other thing that's very important for everyone to know is that there are new rules that came out in regards to a down payment. So before, a few years ago, it used to be, okay, fine, if you're putting down 5%, your property could have been worth, let's say, $800,000, and you could put down 5%. But now the rules have changed. So what those rules are is the first 500,000, you're able to put down 5%. Anything over 500,000, whatever that balance is, it's an additional 10%. Okay, so that now becomes your minimum down payment. So it's very important for everyone to know that, because I know that house prices are definitely going up. They're not coming down. And once again, it's coming to the table, right, with all of your documents. So therefore, we can determine exactly what your down payment is and where we go from there.
That's awesome. It's a really great distinction to make, because it does really impact how much your down payment would be at the end of the day. I know we chatted about down payment, but also I just want to make sure, because for all of the time that I've been exposed to any kind of credit operations, let's put it that way, I also know that they talk is particularly from a first-time home buyer of the closing costs. Would you mind telling us a little bit about that closing cost aspect?
Yes, and this is very important. Depending on where you purchase your property, I think it's very important that your viewers understand that if you purchase a property in Toronto, let's say, okay, Toronto has 2 land transfers that you have to pay. So for example, let's say you're purchasing a property for, let's say $1 million. Right? Your land transfer costs are going to double. It may not be 20,000. It will be, let's say, for example, 40,000, as opposed to if you purchase a property, let's say in Durham, in Markham, in Peel, you're only paying 1 land transfer tax. So it's very important that your viewers do keep this in mind, because the last thing that you want to do is go to yours on closing and not have enough money to close your deal. So that's one. Now, the other thing is that for first-time home buyers, you are entitled to a rebate because you are a first-time home buyer, right? So you're entitled to $4,000, which, I mean, every dollar counts when you're closing your deal.
Perfect, thank you. And the fact that we kind of jump back right into there with regards to the first-time home buyers, I want to just quickly sidestep, if you will, and go to Carol, and just to chat a little bit with regards to that first-time home buyers and from an investment perspective. And Carol, would you mind?
Yeah, sure. So one of the things. Thanks for all of that clarification, Charlene. I was like listening really intently because I was learning a lot of stuff, and actually I was thinking about the stress test too when you were just talking about the news thing that you just told us about. There's also this new stress test, right? You have to qualify at 2 different interest rates, I believe, based on the new rules that we have now. Is that right?
That's correct. Yes.
Yeah. And so what I have good news for those who don't know. So for someone who's saving and has money invested in, for example, if you invest in a non-registered account, so not a tax-free savings account here in Canada or a retirement savings plan, but if you're invested in a non-registered account, any type of dividends or capital gains or interest that you gain within that portfolio, at the end of the year, you get a T5, T3, you have to pay taxes on whatever it is that you gained in the portfolio. But when you invest in an RSP, everything that you invest grows tax deferred. And the good thing about investing in the RSP is that if you've been saving money in an RSP, you have access to the home buyers plan. So the home buyers plan is something that is available for first-time buyers. So that means somebody who hasn't owned a home in the last 4 years. So if you haven't owned a home in the last 4 years, you're considered you can qualify as a first-time buyer, and you're able to take up to $35,000 from your RSP without triggering any type of tax event. So there will be no withholding taxes taken from your RSP withdrawal when you withdraw it under the home buyers plan. So that means your financial advisor submits your redemption from the account, and it's on a form that the government understands, and then your financial organization releases the money, but no tax is deducted. And so the really cool thing about the home buyers plan is that you're basically borrowing money from yourself. The money was allowed to grow tax deferred, so you were able to accumulate more money in that account than you would have if it was in an account that was outside of the registration, because you'd be, like I said, charged the taxes on the dividends and everything that you made on the account. Here, the account is grown tax deferred. So that means 2 people could potentially withdraw up to $70,000 because you can each get $35,000 each out of your RSP. And what the government does is they allow you to take this money out, and you have that money you have to be a Canadian resident, and it has to be for a property that's here in Canada. So you can't take the money out of the home buyers plan in order to buy a property in the US or somewhere else. It has to be here in Canada because, CRA likes to get their money on their taxes at some point in the future. So they're not going to let you be taking the money and going all over the place. So, this what's really cool about this program is that you take the money out, you buy your house, and then you have 2 years before you have to start paying back the money. And how that works is, if let's just say you took $15,000 out of your RSP, you start paying it back in 2 years, and you have to pay 1/15 of it by the end of the year. So the cool thing about borrowing money from yourself, from your own savings, is that if at the end of the first year that you're supposed to pay the money back, you can't pay it back, or you didn't pay it back, then they're going to add $1,000 to your income for the year because you got a deduction for it, and they gave it to you tax deferred, because the idea is that you're going to pay it back, but it's not going to hit your credit bureau or something like that, because you're borrowing money, your own money. But because the government has given you all these credits, they have said that if you don't pay it back within the 15 years, any year that you don't pay it back, they add that payment, which is 1/15. They add that payment to your income for the year. So it's a really great opportunity for you to save. So if you're saving and doing the best you can, you're investing your money and you're getting those great returns, and you're getting the tax deferral on those returns. And then it's giving you access to a bigger lump sum. And the government actually increased the limit, because it was about 25,000, now it's 35,000. And if there's 2 people, like I said, it can be 35 and 35, so up to $70,000. So it's an amazing opportunity for you to be able to use your savings to buy a home. And it's something that we should definitely take advantage of, because a retirement savings plan, a lot of people don't like RSPs. They say, oh, I don't like RSPs because when I put money in it, then I have to pay taxes when I take it out. But when you get the deferral, it's the deferral. You get the deduction when you put the money in, and you get the deferral on any growth that is in there. And I just think it's something that a lot of people that may be saving now, who maybe you don't have a lot of money, but then you're thinking, oh, well, I don't want to take the money out of my RSP, but there is a plan in place where you can do this and you won't have to pay taxes.
Thank you, Carol. And you mentioned that it's an interest-free, that's number one. And you also mentioned that, it's that you're taking the money out of the RSP. So 2 things just for clarification purposes. Obviously, you have to have that money saved in your account before you can take out that $35,000 that Carol mentioned. And the other thing is with regards to a lot of times, it's been my experience where people always think that some or the other, the home buyers mean that they have to repay the government. Would you just expand a bit on that, Carol?
Yeah, so the Home Buyers Plan is a plan it's an initiative that comes from the government that is to enable people to be able to afford to buy a house. And it's when you're paying back the money is being paid. So at the end of the year, for example, maybe you're a person that contributes regularly to your retirement savings plan. And at the end of the year, maybe you've contributed $3,000 or $4,000, but $1,000 is what you're supposed to pay, the 1/15 of the 15,000 we talked about earlier. So what you do is you designate 1,000 of the 4,000 you contributed to your RSP to go towards paying back your home buyers plan. And every year you'll designate a contribution, and it will go back into your plan. Because what happens with RSPs is that the RSP contribution room is generated based on earned income. So you earned income, and as a result of that, 18% of earned income room is generated every year. And if you, for example, took the money out of the home buyers plan, never paid a dime back, then the room is lost forever. So you may generate new room based on your new earnings, but that room that you had generated to be able to make the earlier contribution so you could take the money out, if you don't pay the money back, then you've lost that contribution room forever. And why it's important is because you have the contribution room to make, and the money is allowed to grow tax sheltered. And tax sheltering is really important because we enjoy that in a tax-free savings account where there is no taxes on the redemption. But with an RSP, as you start to earn over $50,000 and more, you start to see the need for having a deduction on your income taxes. And RSPs provide that deduction that helps us to reduce our income and gets you back a bit of a refund that you can then reinvest. And so RSPs are a very valuable part of investment planning and retirement planning.
And it turns out as well as for your home buying planning.
Exactly.
So how long does the money have to be in an RSP? Are there any rules governing that, Carol?
Yes. So the money has to have been in that account for 90 days. If the money was there for less than 90 days, then the deduction that would have been given for each of those payments made within the 90 days will be reversed. So you'll lose the deduction if the money wasn't there for 90 days.
Okay, that's really good to know. That's an important distinction. I'm just going to take it back now to Shirley with regards to we talk about the down payment, etc., and we talk a little bit about the closing costs. Do you want Charlene to expand a little bit on what could a client do in order to, Carol did talk about investing, putting that money into the home buyers fund, et cetera, whatever the case might be, and even making sure that it's understood that should be left in the plan for 90 days before taking it out so that you can still get that deduction. Is there anything that you can tell our audience, Charlene, from your experience within the mortgage industry for the past, I think 17 years, that would help them or guide them or give them a sense as to how they can go about, adding to their savings, etc. Not from the investment part like Carol did, but just plain and simple what you've known to tell clients over time.
So in regards to the down payment, you know what? There is the bank of mom and dad. If mom and dad are willing to help you out, they can help you and with gifted funds, which the banks will definitely honor. And it's a big help to be able to have gifted funds from an immediate family member, though. So that's mom, dad, brother, sister.
She's stressing us out, Michelle.
Yes, I'm putting all the parents on the spot right there. So, but it is known that I think among us, Carol, but for the viewers to understand that there is that, and I believe if I could recall, Charlene, that the banks would accept a proof by a gift by way of a gift letter, correct?
That's right. Exactly. Yes.
Okay. Perfect.
And that's I think we may have to mute Charlene because my kids will be on the phone soon.
and that means that mom and dad has said I'm going to gift to you $20,000 for you to put towards your home. The bank sees us as evidence of that. Suppose someone were to say, well, what's to stop me, Michelle, from just simply going and get a loan to buy the house? What would you say for my down payment? What would you say to that, Charlene?
I would really and truly say, let's look at your numbers first, because keep in mind, once again, once you take out another credit product, so now we're taking out a loan, that now adds to your liabilities, okay? So not only do you have a monthly payment on the loan, but now you also have your mortgage, which you've used that loan as a down payment, okay? So that means that our utilization, for one, goes up. And that also affects the ratios that would actually help us to get your deal qualified and approved. So you really want to be mindful. You want to speak to a professional once again about taking out a loan for a down payment.
That's good to know. But I think someone mentioned a while back, could they actually use a loan in order to make the down payment? I thought the banks frown on that and didn't allow it.
They do frown on it, but what they will accept is if you have a line of credit, they will allow you to use funds from your line of credit to be able to, for your down payment, right?
Oh, that's good to know, yes.
But once again, it will also take the monthly payments. So whatever you decide to take out, they will definitely calculate to see, what is this amount that you're withdrawing? What is that going to cost you a month? But definitely a line of credit is definitely a good option.
Okay, that is really interesting and good to know. Carol, do you have anything to add at this point with regards to that side for Charlene?
No, I think Charlene's given some really good information. Like I said, I listen and learn because I come at financial services from a different angle. So I'm always talking to my clients. A lot of my clients have investment properties. And so that's why I was asking the other question too, is that some of them have 4 and 5 properties, and it's become a corporation now. And a lot of people see home ownership as being a way to achieve retirement that's solid and stable, because they feel that they're never going to grow their money by putting money aside every month, but they feel that if they buy a property, then take equity out, buy another property. This is something that I'm seeing is very common with my clients, and them utilizing a mortgage broker to help them to also to restructure their debt, right? So to go in and restructure everything so that they can have more affordable interest rates and get rid of consumer debt. Because one of the things I speak to my clients about is about when we're trying to invest money for them and then they have a whole bunch of consumer debt, right? And you try to get the client to look at the interest rate that they're getting for their investment. And then also you have this store card that's over 25% or something like that. So you're pretty much wiping out your returns because you have a loan that's really high, and then you have you're not making that much money on your investment. So sometimes trying to help them to understand how they can go and speak to a mortgage professional like Charlene to help them to restructure their debt so that they can reduce interest costs. And I think that's one thing that I would recommend to anyone that has a lot of consumer debt, is look at your home, the equity in your home, and speak to a mortgage professional, like I said, like Charlene, who can help you to do that restructuring, because it will save thousands of dollars.
And that's an awesome point to make. I just got a question came in with regards to the going back to the mortgage term, and what is the mortgage term and what happens when the term is up. So we chatted with regards to the amortization versus what the term is. Now, can you just discuss a bit with regards to this question here? What is the mortgage term and what happens when the term is up? Is my mortgage done or what happens?
Okay, so your mortgage term, once again, is what the bank, what the bank will approve you for, right? So once again, that's either a 1 to 5 year term. Now, once your term is up, as long as you've had good repayment history on your mortgage, the bank will send you, I call it like a menu. I call it like, for example, you're going to McDonald's and you look at this menu of options. So do you want to renew now at a 1 year, a 2 year, 3 year, 4 year, or 5 year, right? You get to select the term that you would like. And there, you don't have to go through the initial process again. They just continue on with whatever your balance is, whatever term that you've selected. They will definitely now calculate the new mortgage amount, and then you would continue your term from there, right? But the key thing is to make sure that you have good repayment history in order to be able, once again, to benefit from the good rates that will be coming once your term is up.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for that clarification. I know we kind of, I don't want to get too technical, but I do want to share with our audience with regards to the specific types of mortgages that you might have, would have confronted in your years within the industry. Just as simple as possible so that we can break it down for our viewers.
Okay, so can you just clarify your question for me?
So just a little bit of technical knowledge, I know will come up here in terms of the types of mortgages. Sometimes I've had someone who asked me about the combining mortgage terms and rates, for example. So in that instance, in that case, that person, I told them to look at a portion of their money for that peace of mind and put it into a fixed term mortgage. And then the rest of it could be the variable terms. And then they looked at me as though I'd grown horns or something, like, what are you talking about, Michelle? So sometimes, like I said, what we take for granted that is known, that's what I'm trying to get, there's a number of different types, Charlene, of mortgages that are available out there that people might want to have some information on.
Yes. Okay. So, and it really just depends on who you are. So for example, let's say an investor, someone who's planning to purchase now another property, they may want to consider having a HELOC, a home equity line of credit on their property, because as the mortgage gets paid down, their home equity line increases. So that means that they have available extra money, or let's say the principal that they paid off on their property, they will have those funds available to them. Now, someone who is, let's call a first-time home buyer, somebody who's new to the industry, I would probably say to them, you may want to try going in with a fixed rate, which means that, okay, fine, depending on whatever your term is, you are going to consistently pay the same mortgage payments each and every month. You will not have access to the additional funds until, let's say, your term is up, because it's fixed. It's a fixed rate, and it's also a closed mortgage, which just basically means you don't have access to those extra monies until you're ready to refinance or your term is up.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that, Charlene. We did have a question coming in as well here. It's where is interest rates going? This is just very subjective, so it will be based on your opinion. I'm just going to ask if both yourself and Carol could address that from your different perspective. Where is interest rates going? Should we lock in now or remain in a variable rate mortgage? Charlene.
Carol, do you want to take that one?
Well, interest rates. Why is this person stressing me out? Okay. Interest rates. Well, interest rates are rising slowly. They are rising, but it is slowly. And inflation even is quite high right now post-COVID. So COVID has made the global recovery, very. I guess it's sort of like we're in a sort of a no man's land where we can't predict exactly what the outcome will be as far as interest rates. But what we do know is that where interest rates are going is they're going up. But we do believe that the central government, the central banks will taper it so that it's going to be a very slow rise. It's not going to be like some hyperinflation where interest rates just go crazy, because that would not be good for any economy in the world. So the Bank of Canada will continue to taper the rates so that they will not get out of control. I think if you're in a variable rate mortgage, you're still the environment is still pretty okay. I don't see that there's any reason, if you're a person that normally invests this way, that means you're a person that's into high risk then, because a person that can be in a variable mortgage obviously recognizes that you're able to get a lower rate, impact your principal, have more impact on your principal. But obviously if something should happen and rates go up, then you have the option to lock into a higher rate. I think that's how it goes, right, Charlene? If you're in a variable. Yeah. So interest rates right now, I don't think that you should be vigilant if you're in a variable, definitely, but I don't think anything out of the ordinary is going to happen. But it's a crystal ball, right? Like we can't predict and put in stone anything and say, go to bed tonight, sleep like a baby, everything's going to be great. We really can't say that, because nobody can tell us. We're in uncharted waters right now, and the real estate market in the GTA is still on fire. Like it's still there. There's the demand and the supply, they just don't match. And so house prices keep going up, and interest rates are inching their way up, but very slowly. And that control is by our governments. So we just have to continue to hope that the government keeps doing their job, and we don't have any type of runaway interest rates and inflation happening. That's the best answer I can give.
I will piggyback on that and echo somewhat what Carol is saying, that yes, governments usually have fiscal policies in place to make sure they can control and kind of ease the economy as we go along. So yes, I don't anticipate that there will be some kind of, mortgage rates right now. You can get mortgage rates as low as 1.43, and of course, obviously, based on all of the things that Charlene was said before, you could get that mortgage rate at a variable, or you can have interest rates a little higher. But I don't see it going all of a sudden. It goes from 1.43, or let's say standard, maybe 2.06. Let's say standard, and you get, and all of a sudden it's going to be 5-6%. That's not going to do good for the economy. That's not going to do good for anything. And that's not what easement in terms of government fiscal policy is going to be about. So I think to some degree, you can rest assured that it is going up. Like Carol said, but it's going up kind of incrementally, and that's across the board. That's not just here in Canada. That's also what we can see on the US side. We can see the house prices are crazy. Most of real estate has changed from being, here is my house, put it on the market and off we go, to being, here is my house, let's announce that it's coming soon so that we can get the bids come in. And when the bids come in, it could be inflated, and we'll sell for 100,000 over more than our asking price. So that's our pretty much our new norm in terms of the the housing market, particularly here in Canada, but I should say following the trends somewhat in the US, their house prices have been going up as well. So there is that to consider. Again, in terms of, do we know what's going to happen with the interest rate? We see a little bit of it, of movements, but we cannot say conclusively. There was a time about almost 10 years ago, I would think around the 2011 mark, where it looked as though it was going to be, I think it was around maybe the 3% or 3.odd%. And here today, you can walk into a bank and based on, your interest rate, based on your credit rating, your et cetera, you can easily walk away with a 2% variable or 1.4% variable. And I am not kidding with that. So that is, for the super cautious person, to answer that person's question, for the super cautious person, if you want to lock in, by all means, it's a good, we've never had such low interest rates. So by all means, lock in. But there might be, a savings component, like I mentioned earlier, that you can actually do it twofold. I believe Scotiabank, where I worked with many years ago, and I don't know if they have the same product, where they had, and I think a lot of the banks might be doing it now as well, where you can actually have a portion of your mortgage as a fixed and a portion of your mortgage is a variable. So you kind of can half sleep, you can half sleep soundly and half keep awake on the side. But on a serious note, it does give you the ability to capitalize on the savings, but at the same time, not having a whole lot of your mortgage exposed to a rise in interest rate situation. So hopefully that answers that question. Someone was asking, how can I save on interest? So I'm just going to let Charlene, if you want to answer that with regards to the home buying part of it, and then I'm going to ask Carol if you can just piggyback from general. Okay. How can I save on interest?
Okay, so when you're approved for a mortgage, there are terms in your contract that will allow you to pay additional money. So it's called a prepayment privilege. Okay. Now, if you have some extra money, some investment, some money sitting around, you can actually, if the bank will allow you, double up on your monthly payments. Anything that you pay over and above your regular mortgage payment will go directly to your principal. And that is one way of paying down your mortgage and also saving interest. Another option is that the bank will allow you to pay whether it be 10 or 15% of the original principal or mortgage payment each year on each anniversary. So once again, that allows you to save more interest on your money, and that money definitely goes directly towards your principal amount paying down your mortgage balance. So those are I would strongly advise for the viewers that do have a little bit of money saved up, by all means, take advantage of those opportunities.
Okay. Carol?
What she said. No, I would definitely say exactly like what Charlene said is exactly it. And it's just important to understand the beauty of compounding. It works both ways. So compounding works great when you're growing your investment or your house is appreciating in value. And then you get the compounding on top of the compounding. So interest on top of interest. But it's the same thing too when you own a home and you have this huge, like your house could be worth $1 million and you've maybe put $250,000 down. That's a really nice deposit if you did that. Good for you. But anyways, but if you put down like a quarter of the deposit, and your monthly payment will just be interest. It's like taking a tiny little pebble and just throwing out this big monster all the time. And then when you actually reduce the principals, you reduce the monster a bit, then when you actually start to pay, you're actually reducing your debt so much faster and taking advantage of all these opportunities that the bank gives you to pay down your debt. So when you have your anniversaries or the times when they say that you're allowed to, that Charlene was mentioning, if you have the opportunity to take advantage of it, it's definitely something that you should consider, because interest can be your friend and it can also be your enemy too, right?
So that's a good point. I like your analogy of taking this little pebble and and just tossing it at this monster, because then, you know, the mortgage is kind of sort of a monster. But someone would argue that, okay, I don't have a lump sum, so then what would I do? And I will tell you from experience of working within credit myself for a little bit, and again, I could only kind of leverage my knowledge from my Scotiabank days. So forgive me, it's a little dated as well. But back in the day when I worked at Scotiabank, what we did encourage clients to do as well, they were able to make additional payments. So on the very same day of your mortgage payment, then you will add an additional payment. So if your mortgage payment was, you know, on the 15th of the month and it was for $500, then you can request an additional $500 to be withdrawn on that same day. The difference is, and I think Charlene kind of alluded to this in her response, the difference is that your regular payment $500 will be split between principal and interest, but the additional payment that you make will go directly towards lowering your principal, and that's the whole premise of prepayment, pardon me, in general, is that it does reduce that. It goes directly there, it reduces it, and you know, and that's how one of the way that you can say it, because obviously if your principal is lower, we're looking at a reduced interest amount. There is a question here with regards to what kind of mortgage penalty am I looking at if I break my mortgage early. Okay. I don't know if there's a rule of thumb, but Charlene, you could let us know.
Okay, so it really depends on what product you have. So for example, if you have a variable rate, normally what the rule of thumb is that it's 3 months interest penalty. So whatever that interest is that you're paying per month, that's exactly what you're going to pay for 3 months. So 3 months interest penalty. When it becomes a fixed, a fixed rate, it depends on where you are in the term. Okay, so if you have a 5-year term, and let's say that you were in the term for 1 year, but you have 4 years left to pay, right? The bank is going to charge you based on the 4 years, because what we need to remember is that the banks are using other people's money, and those investors need to get their returns. So therefore, they are going to charge you based on the amount of term that is left.
I think that's called what they call the interest rate differential, right? Where they look at what a 4-year mortgage is going for based on your interest rate, that interest rate, some formula happens, and then they charge you the penalty. Something like that, right?
That's correct. Yes,
that is correct. It's bringing back memories of my days at the in retail banking, and they look at, okay, if you had the rate at this, if you had a discount on the rate, then you're breaking the contract. So then we're going to revert back to that rate before your discount, and we're going to do the calculations based on that. So that is it's an important distinction to make. I do not see any other questions at this point. We are pretty much almost an hour in. I want to ask Charlene if you have any closing remarks, including I would really ask that you do give us your contact details at this point as well. And for our American friends, we will be flashing at the end of this video, once it's been edited and posted, we will include Cynthia's contact details, and we will include when Cynthia will appear on this show to give some American perspective. So, so before we go to Carol, we'll go to Charlene first and ask if you have any few last words.
Yes. So once again, it is scary when especially when you're not quite sure what to do when it comes to purchasing a property. So words of advice I would give to the viewers is please make sure that you pay your debts on time, because this is where it really starts. You can have your down payment, but once again, if your credit is not in good standing, that is really and truly going to impact you. And it could be a negative way, or it could be a positive way, but it is totally up to you. So the word of advice that I can give to you is please make sure that everything is paid on time. The other thing that I will definitely throw in there, because I tell a lot of my clients this, is our phone bills, our Rogers, our TELUS, those are reported on our credit reports. And if we do not pay them on time every month, it will definitely impact your credit score. So that is definitely one thing that I do want to leave with your viewers today.
Awesome. And I'd like you very much, Charlene. Thank you very much for doing that. I'd also like you to just tell us where we can contact you if it becomes necessary to do so.
Sure. Okay, so I can be...
Oops, we lost her.
So it looks as though we've lost Charlene for a bit. So I am just going to wait for Charlene to come back. And in the interim, Carol, would you mind just your closing thoughts?
Well, I'd just like to say thank you again for having me on the show, Michelle. And if anybody has any questions about the home buyers plan that's located in Canada, you can send your questions to Michelle at the MMMM email address that Michelle will say. I can't remember it. But you know what, though, before I actually finish, I was going to say one more thing, and that was, you know, sometimes something that sort of troubles me as an advisor is that I was mentioning before that I have a lot of clients that own a lot of real estate. And sometimes I get concerned about people becoming over leveraged, meaning that they own a home, they buy a property from using equity, and then they buy a lot of property, but they don't make a lot of money. And their cash flow is not very good. And you know, Michelle, about leveraging. So sometimes I get concerned, meaning that I feel that it's great that people have 3 or 4 properties, but then I get concerned that they're just one person not paying their rent away from bankruptcy as well. You know what I mean? So I feel that it's great to get a good rate on a mortgage. It's good to get properties and to have people in it. But I feel that, you know, I would say pay attention to your cash flow. So in other words, if you have a tenant that doesn't pay rent, can your cash flow pay the rent, the mortgage over there? Or is it that you're absolutely dependent on that rent coming in to be able to pay that expense? Because, you know, investing in property is a great way to increase wealth. It's not very liquid in that if you need money right away, it may not be the best way to get money, but also make sure that you're not over leveraged. Make sure that your cash flow is able to manage your monthly flow of expenses. Otherwise, it could get ugly if the tenants get ugly one day.
Yeah, it's a very important distinction, Carol, one that really needs to be heeded, because if you cannot, one of the things, if you're a repeat or real estate investor, one of the things you want to make sure that you understand is that you need to be able to offset some of those payments. There are times, I can tell you from personal experience, where you may have a gap between renters, and you have to be able to pick up that slack. Otherwise, you know, that's where your credit could become impacted, and you want to do something else at that point and realize, you know, that your credit has been really severely impacted. So that's a really good distinction. The email that Carol was referring to is the Money Minute, Michelle Moseley at gmail.com. We take your questions there, which we try to respond as quickly as possible. You will get an automated response. I tell you, we will be back in touch with you, and we will be back in touch with you. I see that we have Ms. Charlene Moore back, and I will just go back to Charlene for her contact details.
Yes. Okay. So I can be reached at moreinfo@morefreedom.ca, and I will definitely spell that out for you. So that is MORE info, INFO at more, MOORE freedom.ca. Okay.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Charlene.
And I am also on Instagram at I Want More Freedom. And I know that we all want more freedom.
Well, that's really good to know. I will be following you, Charlene. And you will see Michelle. Mine is long. My whole moniker is a long one, something to do with MS. I took whatever they generated. Again, we want to thank everyone for joining us today. I think it was phenomenal. I've got Cynthia Chambers from the US flashing on our screen right now. She is a realtor at Signature Realty in New Jersey. Lovely lady. We had a very good long conversation, very knowledgeable. We're hoping that she's able to join us the next time. So that's Cynthia's information. In terms of the Money Minute, you know where to reach us again. It's moneyminute@michellemoseley@gmail.com. I do answer questions both for myself or for Carol follow Charlene if you can. You know, I want freedom. Is that what you said? I want more freedom.
I want more freedom.
I want more freedom. You got it. So again, thanks everyone for joining us. It's been a pleasure. We always look forward to you know, having these discussions. On August 8th, join us, please. We'll be joined by a few small business owners that will just kind of walk us through their passion, Armac Visuals, Natural by Shen, Sharp Society Barbershop, and Jahan's Organics. So if you join us, then we'll be sure to give you some tips, etc. That is on August 8th. You will see that at the bottom of this video once it's been edited by the very remarkable Andrew James. We want to thank Andrew James specifically because without him, this would not happen. And thanks for everyone who joined in today and, you know, listened to us as we try to give some information. Thanks again, everyone. And thank you, Carol, and thank you, Charlene. Have a great evening.